stories of people languishing on death row are receiving particular focus at the moment. That's because today is World Day Against the Death Penalty. And to discuss the campaign to end capital punishment in a bit more detail, we are joined now by Stephen Cockburn, the Deputy Director of Amnesty International's Global Issues Programme. He joins us now from London. Thanks very much for talking to us on France 24. First of all, can I get your reaction to that announcement today that 19 people in Bangladesh are to be put to death?
Well, of course, we oppose the use of the death penalty in all circumstances. So this is certainly a move that we would condemn, and we think there is, there's no place for the death penalty in Bangladesh or in countries all across the world. The world is moving away from using the death penalty. There are still a very high number of executions around the world, but it's increasingly a smaller and smaller number of countries who are actually using so. And so we would encourage Bangladesh to join the majority of the world in abolishing the death penalty.
Sounds like what you're saying there, that overall progress is being made. Do you think we could reach a point where the death penalty can be completely abolished?
Certainly, I think so, and I hope so. I mean, we on a day like today, we often highlight some of the difficult and troubling cases of people who remain on death row in countries including Iran and Malaysia and Japan and Iran and Belarus and others. But actually, when you take a step back and you look at the sort of the big trends of history, when we started campaigning on the death penalty around 40 years ago, there was only 16 countries in the world who had abolished the death penalty, and today that number stands at 106. And there's actually 23 countries who abolished last year. The vast majority of the executions in the world are taking place by a handful of countries: China, Iraq, Iran, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, with others such as Somalia and the US who follow. So it's an increasing minority, and every year we see 2 or 3 more countries abolishing. Just a month or so ago, Burkina Faso became the latest to abolish the death penalty, and we hope that move will continue.
You mentioned there countries like Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. Now, they're all the countries that last year killed the most people with the death penalty. What pressure is Amnesty International applying on those governments to try and bring the figures down in those places?
So every year, one of our main roles is to try and make sure that that we publish in this transparency in the first instance around this. So we publish statistics to show that these are the countries that are killing far more people through this process than any other. We, of course, encourage those countries to push reforms. Sometimes we see progress. For example, we're starting to see some reductions in executions in Iran because of reforms to drug policy, but we're still seeing juveniles being put on death row there. So there's a long, long way to go. But most of all, we put the message, we put pressure on all countries to abolish the death penalty, which means that these countries who retain it and continue to use it are ever more isolated.
Just briefly, what can you tell us about the situation in China? We believe the death penalty is carried out there, but official figures aren't available.
So we believe that China probably executes more people than the rest of the world combined. We, like everyone else, find it impossible to get good, reliable statistics. So we're unable to give a number for that. Certainly, we always believe it's in the thousands. But getting reliable data and reliable trends in the country has always been difficult because it's such a state secret. So it's clearly used to a huge extent in China, and it's one of the greatest challenges that we do have to make sure that China does open up and be honest and open and transparent about its use of the death penalty, and of course reduces and eventually ends it.
Okay, Stephen Cockburn, we will have to leave it there, but thank you very much for your time on the programme. Stephen Cockburn there from Amnesty International talking to us on the occasion of the World Day Against the Death Penalty.